Hello and welcome into 52/1995, your live music conversation podcast, diving into the music of 1995. This is our first expansion of the 52 universe from our sister podcast, 52/1995 Movies. I'm your host, Alyssa, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Cody. Cody, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm getting hydrated. That's
We love
important.
that. We love being hydrated. That's fantastic. So, if you're here for the first time, which is pretty likely because we're relatively new to doing this, I am so glad that you're here. Welcome in each week, 52 of them specifically. We are going to explore the different albums from 1995. We're going to dive into this year's important releases, discuss them in detail, and I'm going to chat with Cody about his thoughts and his experiences with this music. We will also be exploring a new genre or a new theme each month. So this month's theme is ladies. And this is our second lady album of the month. Today's album is Pieces of You by Jewel. So, Cody, welcome in again. Thank you for joining me today. Before we get into it, I want to just kind of get your first impressions. Have you heard this album before? Have you heard this music before? Are you a big Jewel fan? Are you a I think they're called something Angels is what her group of followers is called.
Oh, I didn't even know that she had like a follower namesake or whatever. No, that's interesting. So I know the two big songs that are off of this album. Again, kind of like what we did with Alanis Morissette's album last week. I thought, you've heard a lot of the songs, but you haven't heard the full album. And I've definitely never done a deep dive on Jewel or listened to this album. I do think that my sister had this on cassette. I don't know if she had it on. She's, I think, in chat, but I don't know if she had this one on Everyday Angels. Okay, I didn't know that that's what they were.
Every
But I don't remember listening to it a ton. I don't remember her listening to it a ton, other than the song. So that's really my only. I don't look back on this like fondly, like maybe I did with Alanis Morissette's album, like where I was
Mhm.
like that was good and I liked listening to that and I remember the music video. I don't remember any of the music videos of this one. I know the songs, but that's about it. The two songs.
That's fair. From and I say you have. I feel like you have a little bit more experience with your older sisters being able to, especially this month with the Ladies Month. I feel like you've had a little more experience with the albums that I've had for at least for 1995 as a general statement, but for this month in particular.
But we're
Um,
expanding you. You're
that's that's why we're doing it. That's why we're here. Is that I love music and I want more music. Um,
How do
for
you feel every
myself,
time you get in my car and I put on like '90s mix? Are you
I'm
are
fine with that.
okay? I was just wondering.
Oh no, I enjoy, especially when you go into your 90s country playlist. Those are because you know every song, and I know four. So, but in terms of Jewel as a general statement, my only experience with Jewel is in like the last 5 years. I did not listen to her growing up. Again, I didn't listen to a lot of music on the radio growing up. But Jewel is really heavy into philanthropy as a person, especially in her later years, kind of like post. I mean, she still does music, but in her, in her, kind of her now era is her is her philanthropy era, and she has partnered with Kroger, who is if you're new here, if you're listening, the corporate office is in our town that we live in, and she has partnered with Kroger to do their wellness festival every year. So that is like her brainchild to use food as medicine, and partner with Kroger to put on that 2-3 day event in downtown Cincinnati. So that's how I know her. That's the only like interaction I've had with her. I've never met her, but I do know have coworkers who have. And she also won The Masked Singer a couple seasons ago, and I'm a big Masked Singer fan. So
Yeah,
she did a great job. She was lovely on that show.
I was gonna ask you if you were gonna bring up the Masked Singer.
Oh, I had to, because that's my only connection to her. Is she was the sun was her costume on The Masked Singer. She sang a version of Billie Eilish's "When the Party's Over" that genuinely made me cry. It was a fantastic cover of that song, and of course, I had no idea it was her because she had a mask on the whole time.
Yeah.
But she did win that season. So spoilers if you didn't watch that season a couple years
Appa-
ago.
Apparently, she was also on Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was on 9 episodes, so I don't know how many are in a full season if she won or
That's
not.
that's not bad.
Yeah. But yeah, Dancing with the Stars. What I was looking for in this was I was trying to. I was like, I know she was a judge, like an American Idol type of judge on a show, and I found it. She was a judge on Nashville Star when they were coming
Oh.
out. Yeah, and I was like, I know she was a judge on something, and I couldn't figure out what it was or what she would even be on.
Hmm.
Um,
I
so.
can see her being on The Voice,
Hmm.
being a judge on The Voice.
I think so I don't know if she's still married or not to her husband, but I think she was married to somebody that was like super involved in country music, and then she kind of did the Hootie thing where she switched over and was like, I think I'm a country singer now, and I think she does kind of have some a foot in the country door in this first album a little bit. I mean, especially with like folk music and stuff. So.
Hmm. This album that we can jump into it and kind of talk about her vocals and the background on it. But today's album that we're talking about is Pieces of You by Jewel. It was released on February 28th, 1995. It is 58 minutes long, 14 tracks, uh, 14 long tracks, which says 58 minutes goes by kind of slow. But her voice is so unique. This album was kind of dubbed as a folk indie pop album. And I didn't know what genre it was placed in until after I'd listened to the album. I was like, okay, this kind of makes some sense. Like, because you told me, fun fact, that Jewel can yodel and I can hear it. Like, there are certain times where she'll do something with her voice where it sounds kind of country, but it sounds kind of folky. But you could definitely put one of these songs on radio and it would chart on a pop radio. And it did chart on a pop radio. But she's so unique and in a way kind of all over the place. If I'm going to lean in more towards the negative, she's kind of all over the place with her sound on this album. But that makes sense to see present day Jewel is kind of leaning into that, like you said, in her Hootie phase, leaning into that country because I think she would really thrive there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you don't get to hear the actual yodeling on this, but you're
No.
right. It is that like it's like that Shakira kind of voice, that like
Oh my God.
back here throat kind of like.
I am
Kind of,
so happy that you said that because it sounds like Shakira, but it specifically sounds like the vine of the girl who is impersonating Shakira. And I'm like, that is what Jewel sounds like, is the
mhm.
girl doing the Shakira vine.
And she's a good singer, like, and just like Shakira, like she's a good singer when she's not doing the.
Yes. Well, and I was looking into Jewel. She's classified as a soprano. She can hit those high notes, but when she gets lower, I think that's where, at least on this album, her lower tone is kind of where she shines. It sounds like when she gets into that higher range, that's when that yodel kind of comes out, that Shakira sound kind of comes out. When she's singing, maybe more so in the middle, I feel like that fits her range a little bit better.
Yeah, I think you're right. And some of these songs are um, not very sing-songy anyway. They are a lot more.
No.
It does fall into that kind of like folk sense where they're talk. It's like talk singing a little bit too,
Yes.
um, which I thought was going to be more my vibe with this album, and didn't end up being my vibe with this album. But we could talk about it.
Mhm. Yes, and it was definitely I say I love folk music. I always talk about storytelling in music, how you can really paint a picture and you can talk about people's lives and whether fictional or real life, you can really paint a picture mentally via song in a way that maybe just reading a story couldn't do. And she really reaches for that. She is doing that. I am trying to be so kind. I want to be objective in my relatively objective, but I do like there are certain songs on the album where she is really trying to paint a picture for us in terms of storytelling. I don't think it hits the mark, but there are a couple artists that she is like connected to and gets compared to a bit that I think this kind of makes sense
I
for
was
her vibe.
I was actually gonna bring that up. Like when I was listening to it, and I in the brief, like very little research that I did, just kind of looking over the album, she does kind of remind me of like a female Neil Young. And I don't know if you've ever listened to Neil Young music before. If you haven't listened to Neil Young before, anybody out there, give a couple songs a listen and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about with it. I'm not the biggest Neil Young fan either, and he comes from from the 60s, late 60s, early 7 or in the 70s, that Bob Dylan time, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young he was a part of. And she sounds like him, like
Yeah.
just a female version of him, and not really my bag. He was
Is
also
it
in the rock group Buffalo Springfield, so too.
Neil
So
Young?
yes,
I I can be misquoting. I should have wrote it down. I specifically took it out because I was like, that doesn't seem super relevant. I'm fairly certain that she recorded at Neil Young's like personal studio.
no, I think you're right.
That okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Neil Young, you mentioned Bob Dylan as well, which we're gonna talk about him in a little bit. And also Joni Mitchell. She got compared to Joni Mitchell in a negative light. There's a lot of negative reviews out there about this album, and people, whether they like Joni Mitchell or not, they're like, yeah, Joni Mitchell takes up the space in the folk girly pop area, and we don't need another one of those. It's kind of like,
wow. We
oh,
don't
it was
need any
there's
more of them.
it was pretty rough. There's some rough reviews out there. I could not find a positive one. Um,
Wow.
but I want to get into a little bit of the background and then we can talk more on this. So in terms of Jewel, the artist, she is featured playing the acoustic guitar as well as the lead singer and the singer on this album. These guitar-based songs were written when Jewel was a teenager between ages 16 to 19. The folk pop album is composed of both live recordings from 1994 at the Interchange, which is a coffee house in San Diego, as well as studio recordings. Apparently, she got a pretty big following at the Interchange in San Diego. It's where she kind of took off and got quote unquote discovered. But after its release in 1995, the album initially failed to chart. It was a total bust. Um, I believe she was 21 when the album finally released. She wrote the songs between 16 to 19. The album releases when she's 21. But 2 years later, in 1997, Bob Dylan invited Jewel on tour with him to be his opening act, which gives the album more widespread public exposure. And that turns her career kind of around. Who Will Save Your Soul eventually receives airplay. It becomes a single. We also get hits like Foolish Games, You Were Meant for Me, as well as the UK single Morning Song. After 2 years, the album was re-released, featuring some re-recorded versions, so ones that were not live. They made studio recordings of "You Were Meant for Me" and "Foolish Games." But despite a mixed critical response, the album is listed number 64 on the Definitive 200 by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So yes, number 64.
Wow.
So it's got mixed reviews, kind of. So, but it's got its lovers. It certainly does. Pieces of You was certified 12 times platinum.
Holy cow.
Yes, and as of June 2010, the album had sold over 7.3 million copies in the United States, becoming one of the best-selling debut albums of all time. Yes. And Who Will Save Your Soul, like the first song on the album, the first track, the leading single, was nominated at the 1997 Grammys for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. Jewel was also nominated herself for Best New Artist. She did not win either award. She just was nominated for both. But that's pretty impressive seeing, and it was at the 97 Grammys, so not the 96. Again, did not go so well the first time around. So that's a little bit of background. Also, a little bit more about the songs, because we'll get into those in a moment. But the bulk of the songs featured on the album, again, Jewel written wrote between ages 16 and 19. Specifically, Who Will Save Your Soul was specifically written when she was busking during a hitchhiking trip that she took by herself over spring break from her performing arts school, where she had been studying vocal scholarship. That sentence, to me, is the epitome of the album. She's 17 years old. She's busking during with performing on the street for money during a hitchhiking trip she took by herself over spring break from an elite singing school. That
Was it elite?
combo. I mean, it's a pretty. I mean, to get in is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
To get, she's on vocal scholarship as well. So they brought her in. So that I think is kind of the epitome of the album and what the vibe is that it's a teenager who's angry at the world, who has a lot that she thinks she's got to say, and she really thought she said something in a lot of these songs, and she was getting there, but it didn't ever to me never really quite hit in terms of like a powerful like ooh like yeah anti-establishment type of song.
I think I'm surprised, like just hearing all that, like, and is that some of the songs or a lot of the songs actually have to deal with like uh, relationships.
Mhm.
A good portion of them are just like begging, like, "Oh, why don't you love me?" Or, and so I honestly, even in the ones that are telling like the stories or more of that traditional folk sound that we're used to, you're right. They're kind of absent. Like they don't say much, or and
Mhm.
when they do, they think they're way more profound than what they are. I don't see people like going back to them. It's no uh, Subterranean Homesick Blues or Dust in the Wind or anything like that. I
Mhm.
just named Bob Dylan songs right off the top of my head, but like I think of a couple of these songs, and I'm just like, ugh, woof. Like, and not even in a 2025
Mhm.
lens of it, because I just think they're not great. I don't know.
Well,
I'm
I
trying to
think it
be,
speaks to the
yeah.
fact that she is a teenager, and this is a teenager's probably first taste of how the world works, of politics, of like seeing that, oh, it's not all black and white, that there is like sadness and despair and bad stuff happening in the world. And this is her first time viewing it. My view of the world, like when you get that first taste of I want to say darkness, but like as a 16-year-old, that perspective shifts so much to be so much more nuanced the older you get.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's like it's profound for a 16-year-old to sing these songs, but as and the older you get, you hear those songs, you're like, this isn't as profound as you think it is.
Yeah, and it's hard. And we started out with Alanis Morissette's "Jagged Little Pill," and we already said last week that we were going to end up comparing a lot of stuff because we started on such a high note
Yeah.
with Alanis that you're going to compare them. And honestly, you can, because Jewel is 21. Wrote these songs when she was 16 through 19. Alanis Morissette wrote her songs, from 17, 18.
Mhm.
And I think it all came out when she was 19.
Mhm.
So similar age, but there's like a maturity level, and not just because Alanis is using dirty words or anything like that. It just seemed a little bit more mature. And not so heavy-handed. Now they're completely different genres. One feels more pop and rock esque
Mhm.
and grunge inspired, and the other one is heavily leaning into those folk roots for a majority of the album. Not all the songs on the album, but a
Mhm.
majority of the album are leaning heavily into
Mhm.
those folk roots, and yeah, it doesn't come off as mature as
Yeah.
Alanis's.
I think maybe part of that might be that a lot of Jules' songs are kind of tongue in cheek. Like it's almost as if like the way that she writes is almost in a response to like it's almost like she's having a conversation with somebody and she's like, "Well, what about this? Well, what about that?" And it's like
Mm.
you as the listener or the person that she's talking to are supposed to make inferences and have your own kind of profound like, "Oh, like you're right, I should think about that more." But it never quite hits. With Alanis, she is in your face. Hey, this is what's going on, right? This is what I think. This is what I feel. Here's, I'm. This is not tongue in cheek. I'm not trying to give innuendo, I'm telling you blatantly. This is it, and that has, I think, a harder punch
Hmm.
than the well. What about this? And that's yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right. And I don't want to bash on her too much, because I do think there are a couple songs on this album that
oh
are
yeah,
really good and really stick out. And it's almost like they're I mean, they're obviously the ones that were re-recorded and have proper studio and mixing and all this stuff aren't recorded live. Um, but they're the two pop songs that I find on this, or that we'll probably talk about, just really stick out to me and almost don't fit on this album.
Hmm, that's fair. A lot of the songs sound the same to me, but you're
Hmm.
right. There are a couple that stick out in a positive way or maybe a not so positive way. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to break down the album song. We're not going to go song by song. We're just going to pick out kind of the ones that stuck out the most to us.
Yeah.
So which songs kind of stuck out to you that you want to discuss?
So I think the two main big singles are places to start, and that's "Who Will Save Your Soul" and "You Were Meant for Me." And I did want to
Hmm.
mention it earlier when we were talking about who or her yodeling, but you hear it the most, I think, in "Who Will Save Your Soul" when she gets into the chorus. That "Who will save your soul," you hear it right there. Um, I also starred. These were. I also starred. I have two more that I would like to just mention things about.
Yes.
Foolish Games. I also think is pretty good. And Near You Always.
Hmm.
Those were like my four main songs that
Hmm.
really stood out to me.
Yes. I chat says I call it the Kermit voice. That's an excellent comparison.
Sound like Patrick Mahomes over here singing a
Patrick
song.
Mahomes. I have Who Will Save Your Soul and You Were Meant for Me as well. Again, those are the two biggest songs. I also, as like the ones that stuck out to me as like the ones I enjoyed the most, and we'll get into that, are Near You Always and Morning Song. So those were kind of, I'm glad that we had one that stuck out as like the same for us as Near You Always. I would also like, I have a couple of like honorable mentions, and they kind of just fall into a category I'm going to title What the Fuck? And that and it is Pieces of You, Daddy, and Painters.
Oh, and I would like to add to that, Little Sister.
Yes, that is that we can umbrella the four of those together. Specifically talking about Pieces of You, it is the second track on this album. Has quite a few plays on Spotify. But let's start with, Who Will Save Your Soul? How do you like what in terms of an opening track? I kind of liked this as the opening track. There's a good bass behind it.
Yeah, that boom, doo, 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 doo. Yeah, yeah. No, it's a great bass line in this song. I think this is her. This is the truest like pop folk song on the album. I don't think it's her poppiest song on the album. I think "You Were Meant for Me" is probably her poppiest, if not. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
probably her poppiest song. But this is quintessential. Should be like Jules' number one. If you were to explain Jewel to a person, this is the song I would tell you um, to listen to and skip all the other songs on her album. Because I do think this one is the most mature on her album. I do think it is the one that is, sometimes you say a lot by not saying as much,
Mhm.
and being like super specific. You see a lot of times in her songs where she lists out like super, like here's the problems of the world, and she hits on it a little bit in this song, but this one feels the most complete, and
Mhm.
really hits that genre
Yeah.
for Jewel and what she's going to be. So
Yes. And this is again, this song specifically was about her time like hitchhiking. She's seeing what's going out in the world, like what's going on. She's seeing probably some not so great things, especially if she's like in a city area where maybe she's, seeing rich people and poor people and unhoused people and um crazy people, and maybe she might feel safe, she might feel unsafe, like she's probably just like witnessing so much. And this kind of idea that who like again, who's going to save your soul, are everybody individual, every single person who's walking past me as I'm playing guitar in the street like that, playing for money. Every single person has their own unique experience, their own soul that they have. And a lot of the people walking around here feel soulless, and that's kind of the vibe that to me that she's giving is how, have any of you walking past me considered this?
yeah, and we were talking about her like storytelling and everything like this, or everything about her, like storytelling, especially with folk music. This one does tell a story, and when you know, like, okay, I was 16 years old and I was busking and I was going to all of these places. She like talks about like specific instances, like the cops want to bust somebody down on Orleans Avenue, or she's talking about these girls on the streets and busting their butt and everything. So the song feels lived in. Like
Mhm.
this is, you know, her everyday observations. And it has a great chorus.
Yeah, it's very catchy. And again, the sonically this is my favorite. On the album, I like what the bass is doing. It's very bouncy. It draws you in and immediately. And that's what I love listening to an album front to back because I feel like it's placed in an order for a specific reason. And I feel like this one like pulls you in immediately, and it's almost kind of like a false like this is the most fun song on the album, and then it's kind of all much more chill and slow and soft throughout. There's no more really fun songs after that.
Yeah.
I want to say fun as in like maybe bouncy in terms of the beat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so I was kind of like, oh, okay. I was like, all right, maybe I'm into this, and then I'm like, I think I'm into this a little less. So, but I did enjoy it. I do see why that became a hit, became charted, uh, but also see why the album also flopped initially.
Yeah, it's crazy that this one is the number one song on her album. Like, seriously, the first song on her album, and then the next biggest hit. I'm not even counting "Foolish Games" because I don't feel like "Foolish Games" was that big of a hit for her.
Hmm.
Even though I see it, you know, popping up in any of the research that I did. You have to go 9 more songs in order to get to the next biggest song for her. You Were Meant for Me.
Hmm.
Um, which is crazy when I'm thinking about listening to an album. Like, I mean, I know not every song can be a no skip, or no, I know every album cannot be a no skip album, but like, I felt like I was waiting for an eternity to get to something better all the time.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like, what went into the placement of specific like song,
Hmm.
what goes into the placement of songs on albums. And this one is the only one that I like. This is the first one or second we've done, but this is the first time I've been like, what were they thinking? Like,
Yeah.
who ordered these around and who said, yeah, that one? Because there are some B-sides that didn't make it onto the albums that I'm like, I wonder how much better those were than these.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like Sonic, like a lot of these songs sound the same. Like I feel that you need a little more variety.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can have a lot of variety within folk, within pop, within storytelling, like within the genre. You thought not every song has to be slow. Not every song has to sound the same, have a similar melody. I kind of got lost, and I'm like, wait, is this song 13 minutes long? No, I've gone through 3 songs already. Okay, and that's kind of speaks to the order it goes in as well. But what about You Were Meant for Me? How do we feel about that one? Is that between Who Will Save Your Soul and You Were Meant for Me? Which one do you think is your favorite?
Oh, I think Who Will Save Your Soul is my favorite
Hmm.
between the two of those. Um, I don't think I ever like sat down and listened to the lyrics or read through the lyrics of You Were Meant for Me.
Hmm.
But this is one of those songs that I was talking about earlier where it was just like, this one isn't as heavy handed, I think, as some of the other ones when it talks about like relationship stuff. But no, I think it is pretty heavy handed. It's like, I know that you love me, and soon I know you will see you were meant for me and I was meant for you. And this is obviously about a breakup.
Hmm.
I don't know who she broke up with during this, but or to write this a song about, but I think it has a good. This is a good breakup. So I mean, it's got a
Yeah.
nice little rhythm to it with the. It's not too slow like some of her other ones where she's just like dragging out notes as long as
Hmm.
she possibly can to say certain words. Um,
This felt like one of the most complete songs in the sense there's a verse and a chorus, a verse and a chorus. I know the beats, I know what's going to happen. She's talking about, just going about her day. I get my coffee, I have my pancakes, and then I think of you and I'm sad again. And then that's kind of the same beat that happens in the next verse and chorus. And it's it it's I think a more complete song than some, like you said, some of the other ones where she's just kind of dragging and I'm like, where are we going? Um, I didn't know this was going to be a sad song. I
Hmm.
saw "You Were Meant for Me" and I was like, "Ah, cute." And then I'm listening and I was like, "Oh no."
I do like the structure of her verses,
Mhm.
um, of how they're set up. We are so, or again, we've only done this. This is our second week. You know, you listen to, we saw a lot of the juxtaposition with Alanis.
Yeah.
She did that a lot in her songs. But I do like this like storytelling thing that I called
Yes.
my mama. She was out for a walk, consoled a cup of coffee, but it didn't talk. I picked up a paper. There's more bad news, more hearts being broken or people being used. Like I liked all of that. Like she's saying what she's doing in that moment, and it
Mhm.
works and it flows really, really well. Um, I just think that, yeah, you're right. This is a pretty good complete song when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think lyrically it's great. I think that the melody's great. It's funny that you say that you said earlier, "Who will save your soul?" You think is the one you hear the most yodel in. That's what I wrote for "You Were Meant for Me" when she was like, "And I was meant for you," and like that's where I kind of heard her
Yeah.
yodel. I guess yeah, you can hear her yodel in this way. So I that was the one that stuck out to me. Is like I also think this would be a good country song, like to have like a twangy acoustic guitar, to have like a country accent sing the song. Like I would love to hear a cover of this with like a little bit more fine tuning of the instruments.
Yeah. I think it would be pretty, and apparently this song won uh the video of the year. So now I'm kind of curious to see for best female vocals. I saw that this song in particular won best video in 1997.
Okay.
So things are going
She had a good
year-wise are
year.
yeah.
She had a good year
Um
in 97. 95, not so much. 97, it went well for her.
it took some time. It definitely took some time for her to get rolling. But yeah, she won. She beat out a couple other bangers there. Oh man, she beat out "Unbreak My Heart" by Tony Braxton. I remember that video. I don't remember Jules' video. I got to go back and watch it now.
We have back to back. That'll be our
Ugh,
viewing party later.
yes, I like it.
Um, so let's talk about Near You Always, and that's one that we both were like, it's kind of stuck out to both of us. Um, I thought it was cute. I really liked it. I this definitely stood out as my favorite love song on the album, which again, it's kind of a little bit of juxtaposition, like, hey, don't look at me that way, don't touch me, I don't fall in love with me or tell me that you love me because then I'm gonna want you to be near me all the time. And I don't know if that's how you're feeling. And it's
This one felt the most poetic to me too,
mm-hmm,
and maybe it is because of that juxtaposition that you're talking about.
mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I really liked that one a lot, both music and lyrics. But I thought it was really cute.
I did think that the bottom was going to fall out on this song though.
Yeah.
If, because because of "You Were Meant for Me," I was like, "Oh, we're in for it here." She's like in love, in love, in love, and then we're gonna have this heartbreaking verse or bridge or something, and we didn't get that. She was just in love the whole time.
Hmm. Well, and again, that's kind of important. Like sometimes we get an album that is in chronological order, not always. But this song does come before "You Were Meant for Me," I believe, in the track list. So we could have that like moment of hope, and we're like, "Oh, this sounds good for her." And then a couple songs later, we're like, "Oh shit." Like to me, and I don't know, but in my mind, she's singing about the same person in both songs,
Mm-hmm.
or I'd like to think so. I don't know if that's true or not.
Who knows? Also, we're picking some of the shorter songs on these albums.
That's probably for a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
I say that, and again, we've said it last week, I am a big Taylor Swift fan. Um, I think Taylor Swift's most recent album is a great example of needing to edit things. We don't need 30 tracks. Like we don't need, no, every single song. Some I say they're good, but do we need all of them all at once? Maybe not. Editing does some people well. And I think Jewel could have used some editing in some of these songs.
Yeah, I agree. This does feel like this could have been on Tortured Poets Department. This song could have been on there.
That is my pairing. I feel
Oh,
like
I didn't even pair. Oh
that's
no.
okay. That's okay. Was it my I said my pairing was initially thinking, I'm like, who's listening to this? Uh, is. And I was like, maybe some Swifties would be interested because there's like Taylor Swift has been also compared to Joni Mitchell, specifically the Red and Blue albums being kind of parallels of one another. Taylor Swift's Red, Joni Mitchell's Blue. Um, and the storytelling behind it, the folk, there's some folk element, or it's like, so I was like, okay, maybe that would be who, if you're really into Tortured Poets Department. That's not my favorite Taylor Swift album, but if you're really into it, maybe you would dig this album a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I do. I know we have brought up Taylor Swift both 2 weeks in a row, but I do get
It's gonna happen every week.
it is going to happen every week. Well, especially in this first month, especially because we're doing, women of 1995 first.
Yeah, I don't know
Uh,
if we'll talk about her during Coolio's week.
who knows?
Who
She
knows?
we might compare her to it. Um, yeah, this one's going to be a little bit hard for me to try and think of who I would pair this album with, even if I had like a modern pairing for
Mhm.
this, because it's so disjointed, and there are like two songs on here that are really awesome, or two or three songs anywhere that are really awesome, and it's hard too because we don't live in a album world anymore.
True, right? We live in singles land.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is hard, but I still think a lot of artists like put out albums that are like a whole piece together. Not everybody,
Hmm.
but I think more established artists are still putting out like entire pieces of art that flow together that make sense. Um, uh, Tierra Whack, her album that came out last year, each song specifically flows into one another. Like you'll hear, like if you listen to the song the whole way through, the end there'll be like a little note that seems a little bit off, and you're like, what? But if you listen to the tracks back to back, they flow in like perfectly. There's no stop, like there's no like 2 second break in between songs. It just goes one into another. So like that's a good example
Yeah.
of someone who's still doing that.
Tierra Wax first, or Tierra Wax albums also can fit into three songs of Jules. So
That's very true. It's very short,
yes.
snippy songs. I see in the chat we say I feel like anyone who is putting out a cohesive album now is putting much more thought into how the songs flow together than anyone putting out the album in the 90s. I really don't think it was part of their main priority in the 90s, and maybe it wasn't. I still think that at least from the albums that I've listened to, like even just thinking about like an NSYNC album. That's because that's what I was listening to in 95, 6, 7. Um, there's not a lot of cohesion there. It's just like here's a bunch of pop songs, go. and but we can see this with albums now too. Typically, and this is almost kind of the opposite with this Jewel album, the more hits are going to be on the front of the album. The heavy
Hmm.
hitters, the ones that they want people to hear, are going to be within the first 5 to 6 tracks. Because if you put a banger as like the one of the very last songs on the album, then like it may or may not get listened to. Because again, you just start the CD over, you rewind the cassette tape, or now you just don't you scroll down far enough on Spotify, right? So I think some artists are really into that. Some artists maybe don't care so much. Maybe it depends on the genre.
That's true.
And in this case, I don't think she cared at all.
But again, it goes back to me saying like who is in charge of putting, because I do think you could probably improve the way that we take some of these songs if you just put them in a better place. Like,
Maybe.
don't give me Pieces of You right after Who Will Save Your Soul. I just
Hmm.
And if you haven't listened to this album, like if you haven't listened to this album in a while, you start with song two, and then tell me like how big, like how awesome Jewel is.
Let's
Um,
let's talk about Pieces of You.
Pieces of You is the song that I I'm trying not to be so 2025 with it. I'm trying not to be so like, okay, we're, out to cancel her, or she's
Oh, no.
I'm not trying to do that.
No, we observe the art from the time that it is. We can look at it through a 2025 lens, but I'm not trying to cancel Jewel for this. The song is still on Spotify. She's not canceled.
Yeah.
But she does. If you've never heard the song "Pieces of You," the song is kind of explaining this idea that hate comes from a piece of reflection. That we might, if I say I hate somebody or I hate that guy, I hate that girl, it's because we see pieces of ourselves in them. The parts that we hate about ourselves, we see manifested in another person that makes us hate them. So the way that she goes to describe that is by describing the person that you might hate, that you might want to bash their teeth in. And she does use a slur, the F word, multiple times, and just like drags it out and just like, nah. And I'm like, are we okay? Here we go. I felt so uncomfortable. I'm sitting at work with my headphones on, being like, can anyone hear this?
I just think it's funny that the three that she choose, it almost feels like I'll bring up another song from the '90s, which is by the Crash Test Dummies, which I think is a wonderful song, and it tells all these like different situations, different stories. It feels like that, but she says, "Ugly girl,"
Pretty girl.
pretty girl,
Yeah. She has both. Ugly girl, then pretty girl.
oh yeah, gay, somebody that is gay. That is what the slur is used for, and then somebody that is Jewish. And those, I was like, are these equivalent? Are these like?
I said, well, two of these are hate crimes, and the other two, you're just being a jerk.
Yeah,
The second two are hate crimes, is what we're talking about. It's 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 kind of crazy. It's very crazy to. I mean, I wonder again. I only heard this song 2 days ago. The reception in '95 or '97 doesn't seem like it was like totally bad. Like again, I feel like she thought she was saying something. I feel people thought that she was saying something. It very much is. I would pair this song with the Hillary Duff commercial. Or
don't say
Duff,
gay.
don't say gay, and that is like, I'm like, someone probably heard that in '97 and went, "Wow, she's so right." Like, yes, and it is very difficult to get. Also, the song's not good. Like,
Yeah, I think the message is good though, and
yeah,
how you described it at the beginning, like the pieces of you like are reflected back. You're hating a little bit of yourself, because you see something in that person that maybe you don't like about yourself or you're ashamed of, or
mhm.
and I like that. I like the intention. I think it's you I don't know. I'm not as lived in '95, and you're certainly not as lived in 1995 either, of this song, but like, was this maybe more profound then, and was this like taking a step for like taking a step out and showing love for marginalized communities, and those marginalized ugly and pretty girls out there. um maybe it was more profound at the time, but yeah, this is when I get into that kind of like problem with art and somebody doing something and writing something or painting something and me being like, well, this is bullshit. Like, there's no, like, you didn't do anything, you didn't think anything, and then you're trying to pass it off as something that is more artistic or more thought provoking. Now, obviously, this is all subjective. This,
Yeah.
one man's pieces of you is somebody else's our song or whatever. Like, I need to compare two completely different things. So I don't know. I don't want to beat up on her too bad. I mean, she's famous
But
and
there's
rich, and
right, she's fine. She doesn't need us. But it's again, it falls under my WTF category. Pieces of You, Daddy, Little Sister, and I put Painters in there, mostly sonically because Painters threw me over the cliff. I was like, sonically, this makes zero sense. She's just like, and then they're painting portraits, and then I was like, all of a sudden, get fast, and I'm like, what are we talking about? And
yeah,
I
that
got lost so many times. But there's so many songs where she's again, she thinks she's saying something profound, or she is like she's just right on the cusp of saying something profound, and it just falls short. Yeah.
yeah, I agree so a lot with Painters too. That one feels like it should be. I wanted that song to be a lot better, and I wanted to like that song a lot more than I did, and I just
Mhm.
I was bored, and
The chorus. If she tweaked the chorus, I honestly think it would have been way better.
Yeah. It's also like 8 minutes long, I'm pretty sure. Like
Hmm. There's so many
one
long.
of those.
Adrian's another one.
Oh gosh.
I stopped Adrian. I did not finish it. I DNF'd Adrian.
DNF.
Do not finish.
And after I got done with this album, I'm DNR. Do not resuscitate.
Do not resist. Yes, that's it again. I'm glad that we put this on our list. I'm glad that we listened to these songs. I feel more educated
Yeah.
now. Um, it's certainly representative of the place and time of a teenager in San Diego trying to make her way in the music industry, kind of learning the ins and outs of life and how sometimes shit sucks and wanting to sing about it. In my mind, I also would say when I say when we pair things, I'm pairing it with the Tortured Poets Department album, the Hillary Duff Don't Say Gay commercial. I'm also pairing Jewel with the beatnik from the second Goofy movie because like
Okay.
that like that vibe where she's like doing the slam poetry at the coffee shop. I'm like,
Hmm.
Jewel is so into that. Jewel is that beatnik, or she wants to be that beatnik so badly.
I can pair it with So I Married an Axe Murderer, Mike Myers' character in that movie, because he's a beat poet in that too, who doesn't have a job, and that feels like right up Jules' alley. Uh,
I'm like, I just want to be like, get a job.
get a job,
Get a job, Jewel.
you dang beatnik, get out of here. No, it
Well,
felt like a lot of songs on this, and felt like the girls from the Mercyhurst talent show from the movie That Thing You Do, who are singing about, I can hear the children laughing, or I can hear the river making sounds, or whatever it is. But the guys making fun of that girl group, that girl folk group, being like, "We're drowning in the river. We're drowning." That's what I'm going to pair this with. Is that specific scene?
I love that. Love that very much. Anything else? Any other song that you want to touch on at all? Are you?
With WTF, like with Daddy.
Oh yeah.
I just couldn't stand hearing the word. I think the word "daddy" has been ruined by society.
Society.
And it just makes that song even worse. Maybe it's a different song. But today
is.
I can't listen to it.
Right. So yeah, that one because I was like, does she have a bad relationship with her father? And no, it's written about a friend and her dad. A friend. But it's how much she has a strange relationship with her father. But she says daddy over and over and over again. It almost sounds sensual, and it definitely shouldn't because it is a father-daughter song. It is not a different situation. But Jewel also, in both Pieces of You and Daddy, talks about bashing someone's teeth in. That is so specific. And I'm just,
She's
I just
very
wrote,
visceral. Like, I want to rip out your throat. Like,
yeah, I just wrote, are you okay?
I'm gonna use your tongue as a stamp. Rip your
Yeah.
heart out. Like, yeah. And I think that some of that stuff does make it feel like, obviously this is a paternal relationship. It does. Some of those lyrics, I'm like, is it?
Yeah, the way again, music and it's they talk about it in the movie music and lyrics. Music and lyrics have to go together. Like whenever they don't, whenever you have I think a good example is Bo Burnham. Like then he specifically uses certain like more upbeat sounds and then such jarring, scary lyrics to make a point.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's the only time it kind of works. If you're not, I say again, you can't have sensual with father figure issues. Like that's, I mean, you can, but like not in this sense. This does not work. It sonically does not connect in my brain. It's either one or the other. We can't do both.
Yeah, I think the way that she ends every sentence with "daddy," it's like a breathy, like "daddy." I can't explain it. You have to listen to it. Yeah, not fond of this at all.
Nope, not at all. On that note, What's your favorite song?
My favorite song is actually, I mean, other than "Who Will Save Your Soul," which I think is quintessential. I think it is the hit on this album. I was a little bit surprised. I'm trying to put like my surprise song on here. Is "Near You Always."
Hmm.
I thought it was sweet. I thought it was endearing. I thought it was very cute. So
I agree. I Near You Always was my number one. And I also put Morning Song. I have a whole playlist on Spotify of songs that fall into the genre exactly. Banana Pancakes, just like just this like very cutesy waking up next to the person that you love and wanting to just hang out with them in the morning and have coffee and be still together. And I'm like, oh, that's it. I did put it on my morning playlist. It falls perfectly into that genre of song. And
now
now I
you
think Banana Pancakes did it better, but like there are lots of Justin Timberlake and Alicia Keys have a duet that's called Morning Light. Like again, same genre, just same type of song. A lot of people do it.
well, Jewel has two morning songs. One is a good one, and one is a negative one.
Oh,
Because you
what's
were
the second one?
no. I'm saying "You Were Meant for Me" is essentially her waking up in the
Uh,
morning, getting ready and everything, and that person is not there. Um,
Ooh, I like that combo because then it's like, oh, it's like we used to have breakfast together. Now I'm having breakfast alone. See, and if you have those songs back to back, that's why you need to think about the order of the album.
we're gonna find that a lot, I think, on some of these albums. I think they just threw them on there, and we're like, whatever.
Yeah, that's okay. But like even so, like and going back to Alanis Morissette, it was so cohesive. Like every single song on that album made sense to me the
Hmm.
order in which it came in. There was one or two that I'd be like, maybe I would have moved this up a little further, or maybe I wouldn't have, done X, Y, or Z. But like overall, 90%
And
very
it
good.
keeps you it keeps you interested there. I
Yes.
mean, the first like four song or three or four songs or five songs, it's just like almost all good on that one.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Well, what about your least favorite?
least favorite, I'm actually gonna go with Daddy.
Daddy. I put Daddy and Pieces of You.
I
Um,
yeah, Pieces of You wasn't even my bottom two. I just think it was absurd that she could draw out the F word or the word Jew for as long as she does. And I'm like, that's a hard J. You might not want to use that there. Um,
I do not like how it sounded. I do
yeah.
not like, even if she was drawing out the note of any other word, if it wasn't a word that, we shouldn't be using, it just didn't sound good.
Mm-mm.
And I just was sitting there like that one was the most shocking song to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that one is my least favorite. And then Daddy is a close second.
Yeah, Daddy's my. Not into it.
Mhm.
Not into it.
Yeah. Well, do you have a favorite lyric from the album?
I think this is from Near You Always, and it says, "Don't try to understand me. Your hands already know too much, anyways." I don't know. I like that one.
I like that. I have one from Near You Always as well. Because your hands are in my hair, but my heart is in your teeth.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Hmm.
I almost put that one.
Yes. Do you have any others?
Nope, that was the only one. Again, I was trying to like keep it away from Who Will Save Your Soul.
Hmm.
But there wasn't anything in like Who Will Save Your Soul or You Were Meant for Me that I was like, oh, I like that was cute or that was
Yeah.
a fun lyric.
Yeah. I did have one from Who Will Save Your Soul? And it's there are addictions to feed and there are mouths to pay. And I don't know if that's a phrase she came up with, but I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Like that sounds profound.
Hmm.
Addictions to feed and mouths to pay. So that was the only other one that I
I like that.
came up with. We already talked about our music pairings, so or what we would maybe pair this with. Any other? We were singing "Pieces of Me" by Ashley Simpson before this stream, but anything to add to that?
Isn't there a song that's pieces of you?
I
I'm
mean,
trying
I'm
to
sure
think.
there
There's
is.
another Pieces of You song, or I can't think of it. I'll come back to it.
That's okay.
It was a MySpace song. That's the only thing I remember from.
Oh, I miss MySpace.
Miss it
Um,
every day.
but would you recommend this album to a friend?
You know, I don't think so. Besides the two pop songs, I don't think that Jules folk debut really captures women in the folk scene better than those who came before her.
I agree.
So like we already mentioned a couple of them, but like Joan Baez, sticks out. Obviously, she's getting a lot more probably play because of the Bob Dylan movie that came out, and her connection with Bob Dylan. Joni Mitchell, obviously, that's the one that we already mentioned. Joni's great. Emmylou Harris, I think if you're looking to listen to some like country-esque and more like on the folk side of things, there's some Emmylou Harris music out there that I think you would definitely like. I found her. I just randomly listened to. I got a record of hers one time, and I just started listening. I was like, "Oh, this is good stuff." So I would definitely recommend some Emmylou Harris instead.
Nice. There you go. I just wrote no. Would you recommend this? No, I would not. No, I would not. I honestly wouldn't even necessarily recommend like the two main songs. I mean, if Near You Always like came up on a playlist or on a radio or something, I'd be like, oh, I like this song. But like, I'm not necessarily like sharing that with my friends. Like, to me, this is not one to share.
I was thinking of the song "Pictures of You." Pictures of you, pictures of me. You know that
There
song?
it is. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, Pieces of You. I don't know if I know that
That
one.
came out in 2007 by the band The Last Good Night.
There you go. Go give that a listen. Go go listen to the last good.
Big ELH guy. Yes, I'm a big ELH guy.
Well, what about a 5-star rating? What did you rate Jules' Pieces? A 2-star.
Dose. I had it at a 2.5, and then because I felt bad, but then I was like, she only gave me 2 songs, so I'm gonna give her 2 stars.
I had the exact same thing. I had 2 stars. I
I
thought
kind of
about 2.5 because as we're talking about it, I'm like, maybe it wasn't so bad. But like,
yeah.
I'm never gonna listen to this album again.
Mm.
Like I did, like I said, I added Morning Song to my morning playlist. I really did like Near You Always. I get Who Will Save Your Soul, and this is definitely made for someone, but for my personal taste, it is not made for me. I
It
am
was.
not going.
It
I'm
was.
not going to revisit it, but I've heard worse. So
This was not meant for you. Is
this was
something
not meant for me. We
That's
were
okay.
not.
This.
We're not meant for each other. Me and Jewel.
That is okay. She wasn't talking about you in that song, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
So yeah,
Uh,
2 stars.
2 stars for both of us. Well, that is all I've got. Cody, thank you so much for hanging out with me this evening. I know you gave a lot of great recommendations last week. Anything new pop up for you?
I have not really had an opportunity to listen to too much music. Everybody should go check out the band Landlaw on Instagram. They have a great song out there that's really going viral right now. It's a good country song by these two.
I hate you. I was like, oh, Landlaw. I don't know what that is. And as soon as you said country, I was like, you.
It's about 2 hardworking guys busting their butt trying to make a living, just trying to make a living. So check that song out. That's the only song that's been in my head for the past month.
2 months, I feel.
Yeah.
I'm kind of on a musical kick right now. I've been listening a lot to the Wicked soundtrack as we just recently, the movie coming out. I did make Cody watch the Roger and Hammerstein Cinderella last night because I had those songs stuck in my head yesterday. So a lot of musicals right now. I'm also in the middle of listening to SZA's new album. So she released an album about like a year and a half ago, but just released the deluxe version, which basically doubled the size of the album. I'm kind of like halfway through that. It's incredible so far. So that's been a lot of fun listening for me. But again, trying to listen to the whole way through, and there's a lot of songs on there. And again, we got a lot of other things that we're listening to. But fantastic. If anyone out there has some recs or anything that they're listening to, go ahead, drop them in chat because I love to see them. I love recommendations and I love hearing new music. But again, thank you, Cody, for being here. Also want to give a shout out to the Just the General 52 podcast, the 52 universe. You can join our Discord server. You're always welcome to follow us on Instagram, however you want to interact. We'd love to see you. Next week, next Tuesday, we will be covering Tiger Lily by Natalie Merchant. That is streaming anywhere that you can get your album streamed, Spotify, Apple Music, what have you. But Tiger Lily by Natalie Merchant is our next week's album. But thank y'all so much for tuning in. I love seeing stuff in the chat. This has been really, really fun. We'll see you next time on 52/1995.